Hey, good evening, and thank you for joining us for SDAB Hearing 2105. My name is Miranda Anderson, and I'm the Secretary Designate for this board. We are live streaming this hearing, but before we get underway, I have a few housekeeping items for our Zoom participants. This hearing will be directed by a chair. We ask that you keep your cameras off and your microphones muted until the chair calls on you for your turn to speak. At a certain point, the chair will call on those wishing to speak in opposition of the appeal and for those in support of the appeal. And you can indicate your desire to speak at that time by turning on your camera. Everyone wishing to speak will have the opportunity to do so before the chair adjourns the hearing. If you need support from me throughout the hearing, please feel free to use the chat function, and you can post your inquiry publicly or send me a private message. If anyone is having issues with finding the chat feature, you can email me on the legislative email account. I'll do my best to keep an eye on that. That email is legislative@beaumont.ab.ca. If your screen freezes during the hearing, you can X out of the meeting, restart your computer, and click the link to rejoin the meeting. With all that said, we can move on to the matter of appointing a chair for this meeting. So pursuant to Beaumont's SDAB bylaw 948-19, section 5, subsection 5, in the absence of a chair, the members present shall appoint a presiding officer to serve in this capacity during such absence. Is there a member willing to bring forward a nomination for chair for SDAB hearing 2105?
Yes, ma'am. I would like to nominate Jacqueline Biolo to be chair for today.
Madam Clerk, before we go further, I don't see Mr. Blades as part of our grouping. It's possible we've lost him in the transition, but we should make sure that he is present before we proceed.
Thank you. I will check on that. Please bear with me. I will be right back. Okay, thank you for your patience, everyone. I believe we have SDAB member Blades back with us. These are the joys of doing a meeting in the digital landscape, so we appreciate your patience this evening. I am going to repeat what I said in terms of appointing a chair. So pursuant to Beaumont's SDAB bylaw 948-19, section 5, subsection 5, in the absence of the chair, the members present shall appoint a presiding officer to serve in this capacity during such absence. And we had board member Van Rensburg. He brought forward a nomination for chair as Jacqueline Biolo. So now I ask, is there a member willing to move that Jacqueline Biolo be appointed as chair for SDAB Hearing 2105?
Yes, I move that.
Thank you, Board Member Blades. And with that, I will turn this over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And to the panel, I appreciate the vote of confidence and support. So we certainly have the call to order, and the purpose of the hearing perhaps is how you'd like to start, or would you rather start with the acknowledgement of the land?
Madam Chair, after I see that you've opened the hearing, so at this point we could start with the acknowledgement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So ladies and gentlemen, National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. This is our acknowledgement. September 30th, 2021 marks the first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, which was proposed by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission as one of its 94 calls to action. This day honors the survivors of the residential school system, their families, and communities. This public commemoration is a vital part of the reconciliation process in Canada, as it deepens our collective awareness of this history and ensures ongoing reflection across the country for years to come. We will be united in the act of reflection. This is an important moment to honor the memories of survivors who were harmed by horrendous abuses at residential schools, and their families who have suffered intergenerational traumas. This is also a time to commemorate those who did not survive. Please join me now in a moment of silence as we honor their memories and reflect on the truths of the past and its enduring impact on our society. Thank you. We are pleased to be here today on the traditional territory of Treaty 6 and the Métis homeland. We acknowledge all those who share a deep connection with this land. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all of Canada's First Peoples, whether they be of First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. We are all treaty people. The peace treaties bind us all. And with that, may I please call upon the SDAB Secretary Designate to reiterate the purpose of this hearing.
Certainly, Madam Chair. The purpose of this hearing is for the board to consider an appeal of a development permit approval with conditions by the Development Authority for a multi-attached dwelling, 85 Street apartment and 42 townhomes located at Plan 2020, 2084, Block 5, Lot 3, also known as 4607 32 Ave in the City of Beaumont, Alberta. The development permit was accepted with conditions on August 13th, 2021, and notice of appeal was filed on September 1st, 2021. I will turn it back to you, Madam Chair, for introductions to the board.
Thank you. And for the purpose of the recording, and so that we might have the pleasure of knowing who is before you, I would invite the panel to introduce themselves, starting with Leon, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Leon van Rensburg, a board member.
And Mr. Blades.
Yes, good afternoon. David Blades, board member.
Thank you. And Ms. Anderson.
Miranda Anderson, SDAB Secretary Designate.
And as well as noted, my name is Jacqueline Biola, and I will serve as your presiding officer for the duration of the hearing. Ms. Anderson, is it important that we acknowledge or introduce anyone else specifically or prior to them speaking?
Madam Chair, that's not necessary. As we move through the agenda, you can call on the appellant and the applicant, and we will meet them at that time.
Great, thank you very much. And so additionally, I would ask from our panel if, noting the matter before us, if they have any biases to declare.
David Blades, I have no biases to declare.
Leon van Rensburg, independent board member. I'm impartial, not connected in any way to any party to this appeal, and free of bias.
Thank you, gentlemen. And as would be for myself, I have no bias or conflict. Under normal protocol, we would certainly invite the appellant to just acknowledge if they have any concerns with the panel before us. Ms. Anderson, would you perhaps allow me to do that as well? And if the appellant might show their face and acknowledge if they have any concerns with the panel before them.
Certainly, Madam Chair, that would be very great. So we've got Mr. Benjamin Andrews is our appellant.
Good afternoon, sir. So you've seen the introductions of the panel before you, and I would ask if you have any concerns with the panel in front of you.
No, I do not.
Great, thank you so much. We'll hear from you later. And as well, I might turn it back to Ms. Anderson for preliminary matters.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pursuant to Section 687 of the Municipal Government Act, the board has jurisdiction to hear this appeal. The appeal was filed on time and in accordance with Section 686, subsection 1 of the Municipal Government Act. Board members have been duly appointed by the Council of the City of Beaumont. I can confirm that under Sections 686, subsections 2, 3, and 4 of the Municipal Government Act, requirements to schedule and advertise the hearing have been met in accordance with the Act. Administration has received no request for adjournment for the board to consider this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And so we will now do introduction of hearing process. Are you comfortable, Ms. Anderson, if I just proceed and do the outline, or would you like to?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Please proceed.
So what we will hear this evening is the introduction of the hearing process, which will start with the development officer presentation, the appellant presentation, application presentation, presentation from affected persons supporting the appeal, presentation from affected persons opposing the appeal, the development officer's closing remarks, appellant's closing remarks, and the applicant's closing remarks. And so with that, I certainly will guide the gallery through all of this. And if I might ask the development officer to turn your camera on, introduce yourself, and then the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Sherry Edgington, and I'm the Development Officer for the City of Beaumont. I'd like to start off by thanking the members of the Subdivision Development Appeal Board. I'm here to present Development Permit 2021-338 for multi-attached dwelling consisting of an 85-unit apartment building and 42 townhouses. Ms. Anderson, also through Madam Chair, through Ms. Anderson, could you please stop sharing and then I can start sharing?
Thank you, Ms. Edgington. You can please go ahead and hit share screen.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay. This property, can everyone see this all right? Okay, this property is east of 50th Street, located south of 32nd Avenue and north of 30th Avenue. Is located in the integrated neighborhood district, and a multi-attached dwelling is a permitted use. In the integrated neighborhood district, the minimum side yard setback is 1.2 meters and the maximum side yard setback is 4 meters. A variance application was applied for so that building 1 right here, which is the apartments, and building 9 over here, which is townhouses, could exceed the maximum 4 meter side yard setback. Building 1 is 9.3 meters from the side property line, and building 9 is 9.9 meters from the east property lines. therefore exceeding these setbacks by 5.3 meters and 5.9 meters, which would provide more separation and privacy to the neighboring properties on the east side. In 2020, the current planning department received application 2020-102 for a multi-attached dwellings, an 85-unit apartment and 35 townhouses with a variance to exceed the maximum 4-meter side yard setback. The application was approved, an appeal was filed, and the SDAB upheld the development authority's decision. The applicant did not start the development, the permit expired, and a new application 2021-338 was submitted with modifications from the previously approved application, which includes an 85-unit apartment and 42 townhouses, which is an increase of 10 townhouses from the previous application. So prior to this application being approved, there were several opportunities for the public to make comments and participate in public hearings. In 2015, there was a public engagement for an outline plan. In 2017, the Beauville Park and Beaumont Lake South Area Structure Plan was approved and was amended in 2020 to change from residential supportive and assisted living to medium density residential, from a minimum of 40 units per hectare to a minimum of 48 units per hectare, which is compatible with the provisions of affordable and senior-oriented housing. The application was reviewed and the following was considered when making the decision. The Edmonton Metropolitan Regional Growth Plan was reviewed, and this development is consistent with it. The Municipal Development Plan was reviewed, and the objective and the overall density is met. The Beauville Beaumont Lakes South Area Structure Plan is also being met, as this application meets the minimum requirements of 48 units per hectare and is a mix of housing, town housing and apartment housing. It supports housing options, consistent with the policies to incorporate a mix of housing types while encouraging medium density developments close to major roads, trails, and transit. This proposal complies with the current land use bylaw, as a multi-attached dwellings are a permitted use. Parking is also being met. They require 104 stalls and are providing 214. The minimum density is being met, and it is also within the maximum allowable height of 4 stories. General safety is being met. Good visibility from the streets from townhouses that front onto them. Existing chain link fence on the east side, so no physical barrier to block views. There's adequate lighting between buildings, walkways, parkings, and amenity area. I'm going to go to slide 3 here. Okay, landscaping is also being met. They are providing 38 trees and 38 shrubs. It will be planted on the islands in the parking lot, around the waste receptacles, and along the west property line to provide more privacy between the townhouses and existing properties. And here is where the existing residential properties lie, and then here's the proposed landscaping that they are proposing. And then this is just a continuation of the lot. The applicant's required to meet the Beaumont Urban Design Guidelines, which has a minimum requirement of meeting 75% essential requirements and 25% suggested requirements. This application is meeting 85% of the essential requirements and 56% of the suggested requirements. A traffic impact assessment was also completed. Access for egress and 2 accesses. You'll see one up here. One up here onto 32nd Avenue. And one down here on 30th Avenue. So this results in good circulation and site design. So after this development was evaluated against the policies, plans, bylaws, and statutory plans, the development was approved conditionally on August 13th, 2021, and notifications were sent to adjacent landowners for the 21-day notification period. The appeal period expired September 3rd, 2021, and 1 appeal was filed. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. And we'll just invite questions from the panel, starting with Mr. Blades.
Thank you, Chair. Just a clarification of the 2 variances. You're indicating that there is, I believe, 9.1 and 9.9. Are we increasing the setbacks or are they reduced?
We are increasing the setbacks, and one of the setbacks is increased by 5.3 meters to total of 9.3 meters from the east property line. And then the other one is 5.9 meters, which makes it 9.9 meters from the east property line. So it is set further back.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And Mr. Van Rensburg?
Yes, through the chair, if I would like the secretary to go to the agenda and just put page 113 of the agenda on the shared screen for us, please.
Panel members, if you want to show your faces, just so that we feel like you're actively engaged. Thank you.
Miranda, can you please scroll down to the, right there. I would like to ask the development officer, in the approval, it states that they have approved 120 units on roughly 1 point something hectares. And if I read page 113, where it talks about medium density residential, it allows for 48 units per hectare. Can you address us and explain what appears to be a discrepancy in what is permitted per the area structure plan for the area?
Through Madam Chair, through SDAB mem. That is the minimum requirements. The minimum requirement is 48 units per hectare. And so therefore they're allowed to have 48 units per hectare, and they're at 1.34 hectares. So you take 48 hectares and times it by 1.34 to give you the number of units on the site.
Thank you. No further questions from me.
Thank you. For myself, a unique question. I'm wondering the relationship with the applicant. Has it been amicable? Has there been a good flow of communication, understanding? Can you reflect perhaps on that as well for us?
Through Madam Chair, yes. There has been a professional relationship between the development department and the applicants. We have no biases and everything's been professional. There has been good flow and communication.
Is there an example of a similar urban design in the city of Beaumont? Similar to this unique proposition?
I'm not sure about this exact, Madam Chair. I'm not sure about the exact, an exact similar one to this, but there are other developments in the community that do have multifamily dwelling units on the sites, adjacent to residential units.
My final question is in regards to the percentage statistics that you mentioned. So you talked about 85% and 56%. I believe it was the requirements of the site design. Could you just remind us perhaps or expand on maybe where opportunities exist? So what was remiss? So if they only met 85% of those site designs, what were examples of where they could have achieved 100%, please?
Okay, Madam Chair, I'm just going to move over to try and find that attachment. You can just give me 1 minute, please. Through Madam Chair to Ms. Anderson, could you please allow me to share again?
Thank you, Ms. Edgington. You can share your screen.
Okay, this is the overall Beaumont Urban Design Guidelines review that was done on this application. And here you can see the categories that are listed here. site design guidelines, landscaping, building, parking and access, light guidelines, signage, fraction of elements, and percentage of elements. And this tells us how many of the essential have been met and how much total have, resulting in the 88%. And again, here's the suggested, which is 56%. Whoops. So some of the things that could, Madam Chair, could you please specify again what you're looking for? Sorry about that.
So again, when we're looking at the 88%, could you give us an example of what might bring it to 100%?
Okay. Some of the things that could have brought it to 100%, I'm just going to go with an overall overview of this. Could be things such as including more bicycle infrastructure, providing more lightings, having pathways from one road to the other road, from 32nd to 30th Avenue. Such little things like that, but we are happy with what they've met.
Isn't a point of order. This is on page 102 of the agenda.
And one final question. So again, my question might be, if you could just scroll up to your page 1, please, and stopping at the 88. What is an acceptable sort of percentage? I see up above is it's 75% and 25%. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, that is correct. Yes.
So this applicant has exceeded.
Madam Chair, that is correct.
Thank you. I'm just going to pause for a moment. I'm not sure if everybody is following the chat, but.
Or I haven't.
It's okay. I just want to. Perhaps Ms. Edgerton, did you wish to respond to any of those? I see that these are comments between some of the people in the gallery, but do you want to expand on anything that you see there?
Madam Chair, through to the appellant, the distance that the townhouses are from the west property lines is 2.4 meters.
And so to continue to educate everybody, is this a concern? What might be the norm?
Madam Chair, the minimum requirement is 2.4 meters, and they are meeting that requirement. They are also providing some landscaping as well.
Thank you. Okay, I have no further questions, and perhaps we will hear from you again at your conclusion. To the panel members, is there any additional follow-up? No, from Mr. Van Ramsburg. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
as a point of order, I would just like to request anyone participating in this hearing. In my earlier comments, I mentioned about asking questions through the chat. I would just like to clarify that's just if you have any questions for me directly, if you're having technical issues. And I would ask anyone participating in this hearing to wait for their turn to speak. And we'll have you actually turn your camera on and ask your questions, so those that are viewing the live stream can hear the questions that are coming in as well, please. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Perfect. So proceeding on to the appellant's presentation, Mr. Andrews, you would like to, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to start with thanking everybody for joining tonight, especially the support and the subdivision appeal board for taking this opportunity, especially today, for letting us voice our concerns. Not even my concerns, just the overall community in that aspect. So I'll go into this. So although my property is not classified as adjacent to the development lot, I feel that the development will directly affect me, as I'm directly across from the road, the adjacent properties, as well as the third home from 32nd Ave. And I'll see a major impact with this development. With that being said, I would like to proceed with our concerns, starting with the bylaw 970-20. While I go through this, I hope it's okay if I share my screen to show some examples.
If you haven't been, oh, great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'll just go back to the top here, my apologies. So the bylaw 970-20 has been approved on February 25th, 2020. Upon reviewing that original bylaw, that was 878-19, and the area structure plan, which I'll refer to as the ASP going forward, in regards to the west parcel lot south of 32nd Avenue and east of 48th Street, originally approved on June 27th, 2017, it was designed and intended for assisted living and supported living. Some of these examples I have on here as well breaks down that it was originally for medium density, as the max units were 40 units per hectare. This was from the original land use bylaw. At the time, that was only available for when the area structure plan was designed. Understanding that the current economic and government grants, the current developer felt it was not a successful project last year, and which had allowed the changes to become zoned for medium density. As I do not disagree with the medium density zoning, I do disagree with the current unit proportion to land size. As outlined in the request for decision and approved minutes from February 25th, 2020, noting in the now bylaw 970-20, it states the changing for 40 units per hectare to 48 units per hectare in the medium density zoning. Again, if you go back to the original land use bylaw, it was 40 units per hectare on the medium density section, as you'll see here. When we changed to 48 units, again, it was still listed as 40 units per hectare in the medium density in the original ASP. And as we changed it to 48, that would still fall under the maximum for that area. Noting the now bylaw 970-20, this is figure 2 and 2.1 in my appeal package that I submitted, states the change of 40 units per hectare to 48 units per hectare. When reviewing the bylaw for 970-20, the area structure plan, the max medium density is 48 units per hectare. This can be noted on page 18 of figure 2.2. Bylaw 944-19, the current Beaumont land use bylaw, I'll refer to this as the LUB going forward, figure 2.3, you can see the original LUB was noted maximum 40 units. As the ASP has been amended and upped to 48 units per hectare, under medium density, this will still be the underlying max. It states to follow either the outlined in the LUB or refer to the applicable ASP under land use bylaw. As the ASP states maximum 48 units per hectare, this is well over the required units. In the development permit application submitted by EFG Architects, Harry Dixon and Ed Goosh, and the notice of decision from the City of Beaumont, it clearly also marks this development as a commercial development. This is figure 2.4. The said lot we're currently discussing right now is not zoned for commercial. It's only medium density. However, this has still been approved for the City of Beaumont. The previous permit that was submitted last year, it was proposed as a comprehensive family unit. So I'm going to scroll down so you guys can see. This is the commercial as of this year, and this is the multifamily as of last year. After reviewing the development that EFG Architects Inc. provided, they had proposed to place 127 units located on the west parcel, again, which greatly exceeds the unit density approved in the bylaw 970-20, referred back to figure 2.2. This new proposed development is increased of 10 units from the permit that was submitted last year. Upon reviewing the parcel, it's noted that the land is 1.39 hectares. That's a rough estimate. Some numbers are 1.34. I've seen 1.4. To comply with bylaw 970-20, there can be no more than a total of 67 units located on that west parcel, if we calculate that off 48 units per hectare. With that being said, this is an additional 60 units exceeding that requirement. With the proposed development, that currently amount of units would be equal to 92 units per hectare. Upon reviewing the land use district map outlining the current development zoning in Beaumont, I've gathered some preliminary numbers. As you can see in the attached spreadsheet, this is figure 3.1 and pages 2, 4, and 5. I've also outlined them here on my screen. Any high density zones are located between 0.6 hectares to 1.47 hectares, with units of 44 to 128 units on those lots. Upon calculations, that's 73.33 units per hectare, up to 117.45 units per hectare. For medium density zoning, the lot sizes are between 0.76 hectares upwards to 1.51 hectares, with 22 to 63 units. Upon doing calculations with those units, that gives us 26.71 units per hectare to 44.5 units per hectare. As you can see, if this development was to proceed, it would fall under high density zoning according to all other calculations around Beaumont, not the medium density that it's currently zoned for. Again, according to calculations per the land use bylaw. The closest match size developments in Beaumont that I've noted are Dan Searle Apartments. This is number 1 here. It's 86.81 units per hectare, and the Montrose, which is marked number 8, which is right here, at 99.85 units per hectare. Again, these are both noted as high density and located on the outside of any subdivision. As you can see, there's easy access to the main roads, and you don't have to drive through a subdivision to get to them. Same with this. The ASP for Lakeview, which is the area directly east of Beauval and Beaumont Lakes, sharing a border, they have a high density zone, which is 80 units per hectare. I'll scroll down to the bottom so you can see. So under high density, it's 80 units per hectare right here. As you can see, even the zone is on the edge of the area and not in the middle of the subdivision. And this is the zoned area for the medium density or high density, my apologies. It was noted on figure 1.3, page 7, figures 2, page 1, that the bylaw would only be amended. The other major concern in this land use bylaw for Beaumont, for our area, does not have a max on the land use bylaw. If you ignore the ASP, this leaves medium density open for any size. In theory, you can put 300 units in this area, and according to Beaumont, it would be approved as it fits the land use bylaw. Even though a drawing may look good on paper, and if you don't look at the area or ask the residents, this won't fit here and it won't work for us. The current development permit notice has also outlined a variance request. The variance request outlines for building 1 to exceed the maximum 4-meter side yard setback by 5.3 meters to be a total setback of 9.3 meters on the east side, and for building 9 to exceed the 4-meter setback by 5.9 meters for a 9.9 total side yard setback on the east side. With the approval of this variance, the developer is trying to place an already oversized complex into a smaller footprint. The townhomes proposed on the west side of the property are now 2.4 meters from the adjacent lots. With being a 3-story townhome building, this leaves zero privacies to these owners. As you can see along here, it's very close to the adjacent properties, as well as there's windows so it overlooks their fence line on their 2nd and 3rd floor, giving them no privacy into their homes. This will greatly affect the enjoyment of these people that back onto this property. If the variance is given the adjacent owners more privacy, as it was outlined by the developer last year, why is it only on one side of the property now? I would now like to move on to my next concern, which is our safety in our community of Beauval and Beaumont Lakes. If this development is to proceed, Beauval and Beaumont Lakes is an extremely active community between the children and families running through the neighborhood. With our current neighborhood situation, which allows for children to move freely between homes, properties without an ounce of concern, I'm one of those people that I walk to my neighbor all the time just to go have a glass of wine and just enjoy it. I don't have that fear of being hit by a vehicle or multiple traffic having to be concerned of. If this development would proceed, it would not only increase the amount of pedestrian traffic in our community, it would also increase our traffic significantly. With the large number of units being allowed into this small 1.39 hectare lot, it would not only crush this small town know your neighbors feeling, It would also make the community feel much more like the large city that we've all moved out of. Having that large amount of units between townhomes and apartments, the community also feels that the risk of break-ins and vandalism will increase dramatically. Being as an apartment building, typically you don't know your neighbors. I've lived in an apartment, I've seen that. I didn't know anybody until I moved out to Beaumont, which is what our community loves so much, knowing your neighbors. A local resident spoke to me and stated that they feel that having an apartment complex developed, they would lose the safety and warm feeling of knowing your neighbors and being able to enjoy that neighborhood they live in to the fullest. The community as a whole, which includes myself, feel that with the currently approved development permit, with the infrastructure and street parking locations, would not be able to incur the load of traffic and vehicles the development would bring. Not only is the west parcel located in the center of Beauval and Beaumont Lakes, it is again only a small parcel of 1.39 hectares. With that being said, the large development appears to exceed the parcel of land according to bylaw 970-20. It would leave little to no room of parking of the parking lot and would need to accommodate for this complex. With roughly estimating of 2 persons per unit and 2 vehicles to each unit, to location of this property, consider the current transportation Beaumont has, that gives a rough estimate of over 300 vehicles to store on the property. Now, with an additional 10 units added to this property, the parking is even more of a concern for everybody. Even though the development is meeting Beaumont's minimum requirements for parking, this may, again, work on paper, but put it into the area and see if it really works. It won't. I'm aware that EFG Architects has proposed the development would also include an underground parking garage for the apartment. There are a couple concerns we have underground parking at this location. As a community, I can clearly state is on a high water table. I'm aware of these issues being brought forward from previous conversations with other residents in this community, as well as people residing in apartment buildings on lands with similar water tables. Another example of being on the high water table in Beauval and Beaumont Lakes is a newly built 55 and over complex, which is Place du Canal, which they did not proceed with building an underground parkade, they actually built above ground. This is located at 4103 and 4101 50th Street. I also have been personally on a condo board seeing the cost and damage that being a high water table can cause to an underground parkade. I'd now like to address the privacy concern that was outlined in my appeal application. As the apartment complex is noted a large 4-story building that leads the 2 upper floors a great view of many private owners' backyards. And the 3-story townhomes is now 2.4 meters from the fence again, overseeing the backyard of private owners. This is referred to figure 4 and 4.1 in my appeal. As both the townhomes and apartments are multi-floor complexes, this is not only allowing for people to peer into backyards, it's also allowing for these units to have a clear view into the back of homes. Again, referring to the map on spreadsheet of figure 3 and 3.1, you can see any high density complex being mostly multi-floor apartments on the outskirts of neighborhoods. So as you can see, number 11 here is on 50th Street and with no one backing onto them. Number 8, very little, it's backing onto the Range Road and the side road. 10 and 9 are 2-story townhomes. And then if we come up to 1 and 2, again, this is townhome rental complex, but this is an apartment building. No one backing onto them. Same with number 3. With these complexes being on the outskirts of the community, it eliminates the privacy concern. However, with this complex, it is in the center of Beauval and Beaumont Lakes with no way to address this concern. So I'd like to just bring it forward that here's where it's proposed, and as you can see, it's in the middle of our area. I'd like to now discuss the property and community values. Having a complex of this size will drastically affect our community values along with our property values. Beauval and Beaumont Lakes currently have a very strong and passionate community values. Our current values fall back onto that life is better in Beaumont. I personally just purchased her home last year in 2020 for the reason Beaumont has a small town feeling, as many other residents feel the same, and specifically picked Beauval because of how welcoming it was. With the currently approved development of being such a large complex, it will drastically change these values and these feelings. As Beauval, everyone knows the neighbors and watch out for everyone. With a complex of this size, that overall feeling will slowly disappear, as most apartment complexes, again, you don't know your neighbors. This leads to the property values, as Beauval and Beaumont Lakes currently has a reputation to be less desirable neighborhood from non-residents. Adding a complex of this size will further increase that reputation for us. I personally have heard this reputation and have and will continue to try and change that. After speaking to many residents of the community, they've also heard of this reputation and also are working to make Beauval and Beaumont Lakes a better area and a better reputation. This is a great small town community that, again, residents watch out for each other. I had the privilege to speak to multiple residents of Beauval and Beaumont Lakes in regards to this appeal against the approved development. I've attached a petition that myself, accompanied by 2 other Beauval residents, and volunteered to go to door and speak personally over 150 residents that support this appeal. Figure 5 in my appeal package has been submitted. However, unfortunately, due to privacy concerns, it's been blocked out for the names and signatures. We even have residents outside of Beauval and Beaumont Lakes who are against this development. These are residents of Beaumont itself. Since I submitted the petition, I had an additional 30 residents reach out to me to be added, and I have electronically, which brings the total against this development of over 180 residents. There was only 50 residents last year against this development at 117 units. Why would the city not listen to the first appeal with that many residents against it? Now, to allow the development by the same developer and same development officer, my apologies, as the first appeal from last year with more units, it's clear the city does not want to listen to the voices against it. As you can see on the petition, the community support is against this development is shocking, to say the least. Everyone we spoke to stated the same comment. We moved to Beaumont to get out of the city. We moved to Beaumont to get a small town feel. Why is the city of Beaumont trying to cram so many apartments into a neighborhood? The city puts out surveys for everything in Beaumont, between parks, zoning, the new rec center, yet one big development that would directly affect so many residents, they seem to not think of the repercussions it may have caused, especially to the residents, and only seeing the dollar signs that this is bringing in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. Your presentation was well done, and I welcome the opportunity to ask you some questions, but I will first do so and afford the opportunity to the panel members. So perhaps Mr. Blades.
Thank you. The questions probably would be to administration, just to clarify. It does sound to me that there were a previous area structure plan and land use bylaw in place compared to what is in place right now under this particular development permit. If you could provide that clarification.
Madam Chair, through SDAB board member, yes, that is correct. We have a new current land use bylaw, which is 944-19 that pertains to this application, and there is a new area structure plan that pertains to this application as well.
And with, if I can just clarify that again too, or add to that, the area structure plan and the land use bylaw amendments would have gone through a public hearing process.
Through Madam Chair, through member SDAB board member, that is correct. There were public hearings held and presentations were made.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Perhaps I may just have a follow-up question in that regard. So Ms. Edgington, regarding the new area structure plan, the land use bylaw, does this application become grandfathered, or how is the sort of discussion considered when we talk about an application under an old land use bylaw?
This application, Madam Chair, this application is a new application. Therefore, when a new application is applied for, the current land use bylaw governs, and it is used when analyzing the development.
So just so mathematically or timeline, so there was a new land use bylaw and then this application, is that correct?
Madam Chair, that is correct.
Thank you. Mr. Van Rensburg.
Yes, I would echo what you said in the beginning, Madam Chair, and I want to congratulate Mr. Andrews for the lot of work that you put in your appeal. Really impressive, and it really makes it a lot easier for us to consider your appeal with all the graphics and what have you. I want to ask specifically about the interference of the use and enjoyment of neighboring parcels. Can you talk to us about specifically which uses and enjoyments of your property would be impacted should this development proceed?
So my personal property is across the street from 48th Street. I have a lot of friends and colleagues that live across the road that back onto this property. And personally, they will be affected drastically. I know we were sitting in the backyard of my neighbors today, and just being able to sit there and enjoy not having somebody peer into that backyard, or having just a 2-story home back there would make a difference. Having a 3-story home that's 2.4 meters from the fence line, that's just over 6 feet. That is a huge encroachment on those properties, and not able to be back there and be so close to a house would be a big difference. Having those houses right there would, personally, if I lived on that side, I would not want that, and I would list, because that would ruin my backyard.
Okay, so Madam Chair, if I may, it appears that the thing that concerns you most is a potential lack of privacy.
Correct.
Okay. Can you talk to us about the safety aspect? You mentioned that in your application that you're concerned about the safety and potential crime and what have you.
Yes. So again, I work for a property management company, and having apartment complexes that are on the outside of a community versus inside a community, the risk of having those safety concerns grow substantially. You're having more traffic, more foot traffic, more pedestrians coming in and out. There's going to be a lot more risk of crime. Beaumont does have a higher risk crime, which I'm sure most of you know. If you live in Beaumont, you see the amount of car break-ins, you see the amount of theft that happens. Bringing in that many people into such a small little area is just increasing that risk. I have spoken to 2 realtors who also advised on a complex this size, being a affordable housing complex, it would drastically change that safety aspect, as well as traffic. That's the other safety concern. Right now, they just opened 30th Ave at the end of our road, and we have noticed traffic grow quite substantially. I personally have almost been hit by a car because people drive way too fast on our street. I saw my neighbor's kid almost got hit, and she was within inches of the vehicle because the person didn't look. Having 200-300 more vehicles driving in and out of our neighborhood, you are going to have that huge safety concern, versus having 60 units, which is what a medium density should be. You're going to reduce that risk because the traffic and the people are going to be a lot lower.
Just one final question, Madam Chair. Mr. Andrews, can you give us an idea of what amenities you have in the area? What public amenities are there close to your house and this proposed development?
Personally, nothing. We have no frills right across the road. That's it. We have a couple walking paths. That's it. You have to either drive to the arena, you have to drive up to the top of the hill if you want to use the bus during peak hours. The dog park is now going to be quite a ways from us. So having this development, and again, being affordable housing, it's not going to be appealing to a lot of people because there's not anything to bring them here. So bringing in 127 units is going to be people that's looking for a place to live, and that's it. They're not going to care about the neighborhood.
Okay. One final question, Madam Chair, and that is you also spoke about the potential negative impact on the value of your property should this development continue. What makes you think that your property value will decrease? Can you speak to us about that?
Certainly. Sorry, Madam Chair, if I may. I've again spoken to a few realtors that I know and I have a connection with through my job, and they brought it up to me that having a complex of that size will push people away to purchase your home, or push people away to come into that community, because they're going to see that many units and seeing an apartment complex and seeing all of that high, I classify it as high rise, but 3-4 story units, and looking at the 2-story, it's going to push them away from the area. So that'll slowly bring our values down, as well as people aren't going to want to move or live here because of that apartment complex, based off of all the petition and the negative impact that is already brought forward to the residents. Residents are going to want to sell and move, and selling quickly, people are going to just list, sell, move. That's going to pull those values down because they're going to take whatever they can for that house just to get out of the area.
Just to follow up, Madam Chair, Mr. Andrews, do you have any? Did you have any scientific studies done to any of these concerns that you brought forward that you could provide to us to help us come to a decision?
I could provide it at a further time. Yes, I could bring it forward. I didn't provide it in my appeal package, though.
Thank you. That's it for me. Thank you.
Mr. Blades, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And just to follow up on Board Member Van Resburg, his comments with respect to traffic in the area, and this may be a question to administration as well. I'm assuming that there has been a traffic management plan or study for the area, and does it take into account the traffic that would be resulting from this development? Obviously, these areas involve local, collector, and as well arterial road systems. If somebody in administration would be able to just confirm that that has taken place. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, through SDAB board member, there has been a traffic impact assessment done for this area, and it has included this development.
Okay, so then it does conform with that area and that traffic management plan and design. Thank you.
Madam Chair, through SDAB board member, this development does not pose any other conflicts with the existing infrastructure that is currently in place.
Okay, thank you, Sherry Edgington, and also Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Andrews, I just have a couple of questions. So thank you. You told us that your professional occupation was property management. Is that correct? So perhaps you come from a place of knowledge or ability to do some research. And again, I'll thank you for the time that you put towards this presentation. May I ask how long you've lived in Beaumont? I think you referenced you bought a property about a year ago.
Yeah, so we bought the property, sorry, the light
Yeah.
coming in. We bought our property in 2020, the house that we're in now in Beaumont, and we've lived here since 2016 in Beaumont. And honestly, it's been such a great little community. The fact my partner and I moved out here because we're both from small towns. We wanted to get out of the city again and moved out here and just fell in love with it.
Thank you. Well, welcome. I'm curious as to your relationship with the city. So, you know, have you had the opportunity to pose some of your questions, or perhaps as you were gathering some of your own research, what was your relationship with the city in this regard?
I'll be honest with you, during the last appeal, we did reach out to the city, and I've noticed over the couple of years even, the council has been not helpful at least. So it's pretty disappointing to see over the 6 years we've lived here, see everything slowly change, and not be that welcoming community it is.
So I do hear you mentioned council versus administration. So again, the difference in my questioning would be, did you feel that as you had questions in preparing this appeal or your statements, doing your own research, did you engage in conversation or ask for assistance from administration, and how was that?
Oh, sorry. Yes, I did. And it was, again, quite difficult to communicate with.
Thank you. You talked about, and I heard my colleagues, you know, you addressed the safety concerns. If we were to flip the tables, and although certainly you're not the developer or you're not the city that's making the plans, but from a layman's perspective, how would you propose that we address some of the safety concerns that you've identified? If we were to go ahead, or, you know, if the development was to proceed.
Let's speak to the residents. I think that's the biggest thing with this. The fact that there was no communication on the residents on the size of the complex. That's number one. Number two, I know last year we've asked for fire bollards to be put on 32nd Ave and only having access onto 30th Ave. And that was refused very quickly, even though it's still required or allowed within Beaumont, as on Place du Canal on 50th Ave or 50th Street, my apologies. They do have fire bollards and only have one access available for residential vehicles. So I think that would be one concern to reduce those risks. And then more privacy, more trees. I know I looked at the plans, and a lot of them are little shrubs or grass plants, not a lot of trees or hedging, I guess you could say, along that side fence yard. Even though there's a variance for one side of the property to get privacy, that's only one side of the property they're giving that privacy to, not the smaller homes that really need it.
So thank you for that. I do just want to take a pause and perhaps just make a mention that although I could ask again for the city to respond to some of your comments, that's really not the role of this panel. The panel is here to listen and to deliberate based on the facts and the evidence that is before us. So I think that it is important that we hear either your concerns or acknowledge that there are bylaws in place or plans in place from a futuristic perspective, you know, from the city. But I just wanted to address that's why I won't be asking for a response from the city to those questions specifically. Mr. Andrews, you talked about the high water table, if that's the correct language you used. You referenced underground parking as well. Was there something specific that you wanted us to remember about that specifically?
It's just a big concern with that. If they do decide to go through with that 4-story apartment, having that parkade with it, maybe limit it to 3 stories and doing an above ground parkade. That reduces that a little bit. My house, my sub pump goes probably 6 or 7 times a day. Even in the winter, it's constantly going. So I know we have a high water table here, and I've seen on the plans and even Google Maps, you can see the little outline. So that's just a huge concern. If a property is going to go in, seeing a developer go through that, and I'm not against the developer at all. This is a perfect example of that. I'd hate for them to go through that in 4 or 5 years, have a huge construction problem and building problem, and there would be the envelope problem as well.
I think that my colleague did speak to sort of the community values that you brought up, the property values. If I may just reiterate, that was something that I would have asked as well. More specific to, those are subjective, perhaps, unless you had factual evidence that stated, properties would decrease in value. So we do hear you. We do recognize that all of Beaumont hopes to have that small town feeling, but as well, we do have economic, targets, economic development targets, etc. But
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, of course.
With that, that's honestly the smallest concern of all of this. It's always in the back of my brain, and of course, anybody when we see development go in. I think the largest concern with us right now is the size. The fact that it's in the bylaws state 48 units per hectare, but you go back, as I showed on my shared screen, you go back to the original, it was 40, and then you carry that number through and it changes to 48. Why would a developer ask for a minimum to be upped from 40 to 48 units? Why wouldn't they be asked for a maximum 40 units to up to a 48 unit to allow for more building? So from reading and interpreting this, that's what I see, and that's why it's a big concern seeing a high density property going into a medium density lot, and the location of that medium density lot allowing a high density lot or a high density development go in.
Thank you. You actually just answered my last question, but I have one more, I think. So just to summarize what my question would have been, which I think you did just answer, is that I was going to give you one more opportunity to, in 3 to 5 sentences, sort of say what your main concerns were, or to summarize your presentation. And I think you just did that. So thank you. But my final question was in regards to the petition. Again, I want to, on behalf of the panel, acknowledge the work that you and your colleagues went into to garner, 150 signatures. You now say you have 180. I'm curious as to your understanding of the validity of this petition and or the merit that a petition like that might have in your overall presentation. Did the city say anything about it?
No. The city, I don't know if the city's aware of that. It was submitted with this appeal package. I haven't had any acknowledgement otherwise. It's just to show you guys that, hey, we're here. We don't want this. We want something smaller. And that's what everybody told me. And I'll be honest, out of those 150 people I talked to, they all said, why is Beaumont doing this to us? There was disappointment more than anger.
Perfect. Thank you. I think that concludes the panel questions, unless there's any follow-up from my colleagues. No? Yes, Mr. Blades, of course. The floor is yours, sir.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. My understanding when we look at properties and the values and the impacts of different land uses and their compatibilities, essentially it's property appraisals, property appraisers, and you're probably very familiar with that, Mr. Andrews. Would that be something that would be able to or bring forward currently? Do you have anything to that effect from a professional property appraiser?
I don't, sorry, Madam Chair, if I may, I don't have anything from the appraisers because again, like I said, that was such a small concern of the whole aspect. That was just our view from people I spoke to, speaking to realtors and going through the community and just seeing in the past what it's done. That was my focus on that. It wasn't the actual focus of this is what will happen. My main focus is the density size.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Andrews, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And before I move on to the applicant presentation, I'm just wondering, checking in with our board designate, if there is any other matters under the appellant presentation that we need to address.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Everyone's had a chance to question the appellant, so we are good to move on to the next presenter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So at this time, I would invite the applicant to show themselves and do their presentation, please. And introduce yourself, sir.
Yes, good afternoon, or good evening, sorry. My name is Fabio Coppola. I'm a planner with Investec Consulting, and I'll be representing EFG Architects and the owner. And just one moment, a little bit of latitude to share my screen here. Can everyone see that? Yep. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Fabio Coppola. I'm a planner with Investec Consulting, who's representing the applicant EFG Architects and the owner Landrex Hunter Ridge in this hearing in the proposed development. This evening, I'll be presenting information that can be found within my written response letter dated and submitted September 20th, 2021. So the subject site is located in southeast Beaumont within the Beauval Park Beaumont Lake South Area Structure Plan. This development permit application is for a private multifamily development, which includes 8 3-story townhouses containing 42 units and 1 4-story apartment containing 85 units. The total unit count for the proposed development is 127 units. The total site area is 1.37 hectares. The proposed development adheres to higher order statutory plans and is consistent with the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board's growth plan, the City of Beaumont's municipal development plan, the Beauval Park Beaumont Lake South Area Structure Plan, as well as the City of Beaumont's land use bylaw. The proposed development adheres to the growth plan's minimum density requirements of 35 dwelling units per net residential hectare for a greenfield development in Beaumont. The proposed development also adheres to the MDP's land use concept, which contemplates this parcel for residential development. In addition, this proposal provides opportunity for a more diverse and inclusive neighborhood by providing a wider array of living units, which is currently lacking within Beaumont. Furthermore, this proposal meets the policy of locating medium density residential development near major roads, trails, and transit opportunities. Reviewing the Beauval Park Beaumont Lake South Area Structure Plan, the proposed development meets both the policies and overall intent set forth within the ASP. Examining the land use concept within the ASP, the plan area is intended to develop as medium density residential. Parking for the proposed development has been captured internally with the property boundary of development. The proposed development has provided adequate parking in the form of private garage, surface, and underground parking. The parking breakdown as required by the land use bylaw for the 4-story apartment is 62 parking stalls. What the proposed development has provided for the apartment is 67 parking stalls at the surface, with 64 parking stalls provided underground for a total of 131 parking stalls dedicated to the apartment building. The parking breakdown required by the land use bylaw for the townhouses is 42 parking stalls. What the proposed development has provided for the townhouse parking, there are 66 garage parking stalls with 17 surface parking stalls for a total of 83 parking stalls dedicated to townhouse units. In respect to the variance and privacy concern, the existing residential development adjacent to the western portion of the site, the proposed development has reoriented the townhouse layout to further increase privacy between the proposed and existing development to the west. In addition, the proposed development has strategically placed the lower density and height townhomes along this western boundary to be mindful of privacy with limited and strategic window counts to ensure that privacy is maintained. The proposed development has also included a 1.8 meter wood fence to screen the development and has also placed landscaping along the western edge to further mitigate privacy concerns. In turn, the proposed development has met the requirements of the land use bylaw, and the only variance granted is to allow building 1 apartment to exceed the maximum 4-meter side yard setback by 5.3 meters on the east side, and for building 9, northeasternmost townhome, this area, to exceed the maximum 4 meters side yard setback by 5.9 meters on the east side, ultimately further increasing the separation space provided. In order to gather further understanding of how privacy will be maintained and mitigated, a breakdown of landscaping, tree vegetation along the western edge of development has been provided. I will touch on that after these remarks. As it relates to property value and crime, the concern that this development will decrease the community and property value lacks evidence. Providing a wider array of building product types and income levels not only meets the intent of Beaumont's MDP, but is also rooted in good planning practice for achieving a healthy and diverse community. Market value is based on a mixture of location, physical characteristics, amenities, and property or environmental problems. This development will be supporting and driving further commercial economic development on 50th Street and Highway 625, which will ultimately diversify the overall tax base of the city, making surrounding and adjacent properties more valuable because of the increased future services. These future services are not possible without a population threshold to support it. The concern that the proposed development will increase the risk of safety to the community is also not supported by evidence. A key crime prevention through environmental design principle is having eyes on the street, which will allow for a natural surveillance of human activity. The proposed development will bring more eyes on the street and will ultimately increase the overall safety of the area. So in conclusion, the proposed development is a permitted use with a variance that was submitted to mitigate the impact on neighboring residential development and residents. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board, for allowing me to speak at this hearing. And sorry, just to circle back on my comment as it relates to landscaping along the western boundary. I'll just share with you here. So what we've planted along the western boundary, and this is quite critical to understand and know. So we've got 2 Colorado spruce with a mature height of 15 to 23 meters. That's larger than the proposed development. We've got 18 Swedish aspen with a mature height of 10 meters. We have a fat Albert spruce times 9 of them. Those are a mature height of 5 meters. And we have eastern white pines times 6 of them between a mature height of 15 to 25 meters. And I'll go to the landscaping plan, which Sherry also shared earlier. So you can see we've quite heavily landscaped along this western boundary to ensure that privacy is mitigated to the best of our ability. And furthermore, another point of importance is that these windows, so these are small windows. They're 2 feet by 3 feet in dimension. And so again, when you couple that with the maturation of the landscaping, we're talking about planting that's going in this height all across the proposed western boundary of the development. So for those reasons, just to kind of further address that concern, we've definitely been mindful of that and certainly don't want to provide anything other than beautiful landscaping and increased amenity to Beaumont and within this property. So again, thank you for the time and for allowing me to speak at this hearing.
Thank you very much, sir. And if I may, at the pleasure of my panel, I would like to take a 7-minute recess, please. Just allow everybody to take a comfort break. So if we could pause the recording, and ladies and gentlemen, please don't log out, but keep your mics off and take a comfort break. We'll reconvene. By my clock, it's 6:53, so 7 o'clock, please, if everybody could return. Thank you.